Hello there, very good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Politics. I'm your host, Eddie Lane, and of course, this program is dedicated to examining the misinformation, lies, and divisive campaign of the APNU-AFC opposition to expose them, but at the same time to let the Guyanese people know what the People's Progressive Party Civic has been doing in office since August 2nd. Many of you have been repeatedly commenting on these programs, saying how much benefits you're seeing in your community on a daily basis. So clearly, you have a government that is working and that is working in the interest of the people. I have two of the ministers of this government with me tonight, two persons who have been quite busy over the last few months all across the country. The Honorable Charles Ramson Jr., the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, and of course, the Honorable Susan Rodrigues, Minister within the Ministry of Housing. Charles, you've been all over the place all the time. Quite a difficult task to get you. Same thing with you, Suzanne. You've been in the interior, you've been all across the coastline, meeting with people, bringing benefits to them. Let's talk a little bit, starting maybe with you, Charles, and the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport. You've done tremendous work so far.
Yeah, first of all, it's a very great pleasure to be here. It's actually the first time that I'm doing one of these shows since we came out of opposition and we became the government. So yeah, it's good to be back. And the program in relation to the ministry has been quite aggressive, and it's been aggressive for a purpose. The country has been stagnated and going into decline for a very long time over the last 5 years. It's been abysmal. In fact, a lot of people in the entire country didn't even know who their Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport was. In fact, they had disbanded the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport. That was just emblematic of many of the ministries that they had under the previous administration, which if I can ask people who was the Minister of Agriculture, for example, or who was the Minister of Housing, very few people will be able to tell you. So we've got a lot of ground to recover because the people in the country really need the goods and services that governments can provide, the assistance and support from all sectors of government. And that's one of the reasons why our ministry has been so aggressive, but our ministry hasn't been special. It's been all of the other ministries have been quite aggressive and in rolling out their program. In fact, I'm very proud to see that the kind of work that the other ministers are doing. And I'm also very proud to see how our president is rolling out his program and being so in tune with everything that the various sectors have to do.
Interestingly, Susan, I'm going to bring you in here. You've been in the fields, you've been working, and I look at a couple of stories, well, where you went to communities that had no access to potable water, to many communities where people complained of not, applying for so long and not getting a house lot. And you guys have been working over time, for that matter, to ensure that benefits are brought to people. It's been nine going to the 10th month since the PVP has been in office. Your view so far in terms of what your ministry has been doing and generally the government?
Sure, Eddie. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and a special good evening to all of your viewers and listeners. Before I been doing at the Ministry of Housing and Water, similarly to what Minister Ramson said, there was also similarly no Minister of Housing and Water. And so when we got to the ministry, we had to really establish or re-establish that ministry because, as you know, there was the Ministry of Communities, for which Ronald Bulkan headed. And what that does is speak to the way APNU and the AFC coalition had regarded housing. Housing was clearly not a priority for the coalition, and for that, they suffered badly. And so for the last year, there's been a tremendous gap in the housing sector. So when we got to the ministry, we found a backlog of 70,000 applicants in the system. We found GWI in total chaos. The company was bankrupt. Van West Charles was running GWI like it was his own company, and there was a lot of corruption. The staff, 600 staff that was left there in 2015, we had over 1,300 staff we found GWI. Staff that they had was their friends and families and cronies, and not people necessarily equipped to work and to fulfill the demands of the Guyana Water Incorporated. So there was a lot of mess that we had to clean up in the beginning, and then, of course, start to roll out our program. And so a lot of time was spent trying to explain to the staff of GWI, CHPA, of what our vision is for the housing sector for the next 5 years. And so we had to put that plan in place. We've developed a strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan for GWI, moving water treatment from 52% coverage in our population to 90%, so that 90% of our population is entitled and can receive treated water, keeping us in compliance with Sustainable Development Goal number 6, access to clean. And of course, we promised to deliver 50,000 house lots over the next 5 years, 10,000 house lots. And Eddie, how serious we are as a government about the commitments that we made to the people of this country. Just today, I was at one of the goal outreach programs, launching the program at Ramakrishna Primary there in Kitty. And, I read from the manifesto, and right in the introduction, we spoke in our manifesto about conducting a needs assessment that was done through consultation with the public. And since our president was announced as presidential candidate, he started an aggressive foot campaign, going to every region and every community across this country. And we all did that as well, spent our time wisely in opposition, building our party back from the ground up, meeting with people, speaking with them, finding out their issues, trying to come up with solutions, so that once we took office, we were ready to go. We didn't go there to try to waste time to now figure out what our plan will be. We already knew what the plan is through consultation with the people of this country. So we knew what the needs were, and we put that action plan in place. And you would remember, Eddie, last year in our first 4 months in office, we distributed 3,600 house lots. In our first 4 months, we were able to do that. Something which is more than half of the total number of house lots APNU gave away in 5 years. We were able to halve that in 4 months. So if you're asking for a grade for our government, I would say that it's certainly an A+. We've done extremely well. And through the leadership of President Ali and our cabinet, a young, vibrant cabinet, something we also promised and delivered on, young people in government of ethnicity, another promise delivered. And since we've taken office, all we've been doing is going through manifesto and delivering in every single sector of our country.
Thanks, Susan. And certainly you touched on a couple of things. Charles, I'm going to bring you in back in just a bit, but you touched on the emphasis that the government has been placing on young people. And there's testimony in the cabinet, in the parliament, and in almost every government structure across the country. You're seeing a high number of young people are involved, and there's a good balance, if you want, of youth and experience. And the results of that, you're seeing the results of that, because Charles touched on it earlier, where people, even those ministries, you had some ministries without ministers, or people unable to know if there is a minister or if there is a ministry. But even those that were existent, that people knew about and knew that they had ministers, they couldn't find them. They knew there was a Ministry of Agriculture, but they couldn't find the almost 80-year-old man that was running that ministry. who was just sitting there, who hardly knew the process of cultivating maybe paddy. And he was the agriculture minister. You had a man that was sitting there as the minister of labor, Keith Scott, who who don't know anything. Then we can go on and we can talk about who was the minister of education. I knew nothing that was going on. So you had a set of people who were lost, completely useless because they did absolutely nothing in 5 years. And Charles, I know when you come in here, you're going to talk about what you've been doing. I can say to you that young people across this country, many who voted APNU AFC, are impressed with the kind of work the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport has been doing, where you're keeping true to your promise, going to those communities, particularly those communities that are seen as depressed communities, the very communities, and I'll say it, the very communities that APNU AFC tend to use ever so often as political football. You are going to those communities and you are bringing benefits to those people, ensuring that the young people are occupied meaningfully. I'm going to bring you in here.
Yeah, the entire APNU AFC government was incompetent. They were focused on themselves. They were only interested in improving their own welfare and their own livelihoods. They weren't interested in people. And that's one of the reasons why they always had these heavy security guards. Nobody could reach them. Nobody could get in touch with them. They never used to like to socialize. They always used to run away. They used to hide in their offices. They never used to like to go on the ground. Those are very important symbols about how they intend to roll out their program or to do their job. And that's why elections are important. Going back to the original situation as to what got us here with the attempt to rig the elections on March 2nd, going into all the way up until August 2nd, 5 months, the almost relentless attempt to rig the election on multiple occasions. That's why elections are important, is that when you believe that you're doing a good job and you try to lie to yourself and people they don't get the services that they need, or that they can see all the corruption happening, they want to get rid of you, and they want to get rid of you in a civilized means, which is to have an election. So when we got into office and we were able to appoint our ministers and our ministry was almost like in Guyana there's a term we use as a dead dog. Our ministry was like a dead dog ministry. It, no, there was no energy, there was no life. Imagine you're the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, and your Facebook page had 6,000 likes on it. Right now, you can go and check on our page. We have 40,000 likes. Our streaming page has the most active engagement that there is. There's nothing new in our program excepting for a sports academy in relation to any lines in our budget that is different. Yet still, the ministry is far more vibrant. And it's because of the method of which we do our business. And this is just how the People's Progressive Party does its business, which is about people-centered, focusing on how are we delivering goods and services and programs, and which are supposed to bring improvement to people's lives. Now, it's still early days. I'm very happy to hear that people are so far pleased that about the way in which we're trying to do our job as a government, as elected to serve people. But it's still early days, and we've got to maintain the consistency to be able to see this through all the way to the end and give that kind of personal attention that people really want and deserve. And I'm very happy at this stage because I also see the same kind of commitment coming from everybody else. And that's one of the things that really I've learned coming into government, is how much of a team approach this is. When President Ali became our presidential candidate, when he did the interview outside of Freedom House, one of the things that he had said was that it's a team effort. And coming into government, I see that in such an emphatic way that nation building is a team approach. Now, governments can't do everything. That's as much as we would like to be able to do everything and to meet all of the needs of the people of everyone. Um, Governments can't do everything, but they can do a very good job once they do it in a meaningful way. One of the things that that was really a revelation for me, especially in relation to the community ground enhancement programs that we're doing and the projects that we're doing. I realized that the country, even though people in the country have a preference about who they would like to support politically, what I realized is that people are not as political in their life as many times political parties may see it to be, especially the PNC. People want to be able to have better lives, and they want to have a better country, and they want their families to grow, and they want to become more prosperous themselves. And if you are being as the elected official who leads the government, and you are presenting a program that they recognize that is beneficial to them. So Susan mentioned, for example, the housing program, which is 50,000 house lots. That's a very, very important target and initiative to be able to create wealth for people. And it's such a tragedy that we experienced in the last 5 years, the neglect for the housing sector that the APNU AFC did. When now that they're in opposition and they want to talk about empowering people, especially in Afro-Guyanese communities, they want to talk about empowering people. And they're talking about how there is a distinction between the socioeconomic position. Well, one of the ways that you can enhance your socioeconomic position is by owning property. That's how market systems work. And the fact that the previous administration had neglected the housing sector and also only distributed so few house lots, and that our government has already distributed probably as much as they did in the entire 5 years, it means that all they were doing, it was lip service. They don't really care about transferring wealth to the people of the country, and that they don't really care about uplifting lives for people. Let's use scholarships as another example, okay? This is another point that Susan had raised. This has been a heavy rollout across the entire country. A lot of the ministers are doing it themselves so that they can impress upon people that this is a government initiative that's different from the past. It's important that people know that it is a program that the government decided specifically that this is what we believe is important for people's lives, and that education is an important passport to improve the quality of your life and the future and your prosperity, etc. In the last administration, they were giving themselves scholarships. And some of them, they give themselves scholarships and their kids scholarships to the tune of $20 million and $40 million and their kids. And what about the ordinary people? What about the people who elected them to serve and trusted them as leaders, that when we give you our vote and when we follow you around and we give you our support, when we come to you at certain locations, etc., and we speak about you in a positive way, that your program is intended to be the final beneficiaries for those supporters and for the people of the country. They were giving themselves scholarships. Look today. Tomorrow, you'll probably see in the newspapers, or the day after, you'll see that our ministry sponsored a cycling tournament. This is the first time that this cycling tournament was sponsored in 5 years. In 5 years. Think about how myopic their view about life and the country and young people and sport was, when you think about the fact that they can say to the cycling federation, which they have a marquee sport, a marquee event called the three stage. Now, this event is the event that is the most important event for all cyclists, and it brings in people from all around the Caribbean and maybe South America to come and participate. APNU AFC cut that callously. No justification, no explanation, no reason. They just felt like, not because they didn't have the money, but because they didn't feel as though it was important. Those are very important symbols about how you intend to govern and what's important for you as a government. Now, I'm never going to turn around and put our hands up and say that we're going to be a perfect government. We're not going to be a perfect government. There's no perfection in government. We're human beings. But at the end of the day, it's what's your intention? Is your intention an aggressive approach to deliver the programs and the goods and services to people so that they improve their lives, so that when we go back to people in 4.5 years, that they get to say, has this government been the good for our lives, and has it been better than the one that we've had on the previous government? That's the real test.
Yeah, Charles. But you made a point just now. Why? And I wanted to make this point before I comment on one of the things that you said, is that when you compare what that government was doing, the APNU AFC, they were running this country. Well, I shouldn't even say running this country, because this country wasn't really being run in any way, right, apart from being run down. But they were treating the treasury of this country as though it was their personal bank accounts. So you spoke about the three-stage cycle race. Is that because they didn't see the need for it? What they didn't see is an opportunity to get kickbacks. So it
Yeah,
was
for
hard.
hustle. For hustle, absolutely.
If it's there in their
Absolutely.
hustle, they are not into it.
Absolutely. The entire government became a racket under the APNU AFC. And that was the problem. It always became, how is it that they're going to personally enrich themselves? And it's been a really a heartbreaking and heart-rendering situation for me to go into communities where are known to be supportive of the APNU AFC. Buxton, Den Amstel, and West Rumville. Those are, when you go and look at the numbers on the election polling on the polls, well, it shows how supportive they are or were of the APNU AFC. When you go and check the numbers as to how they put money towards those areas, it was abysmal, almost non-existent. I in only 9 months, I've given the community ground of Buxton more than the APNU AFC did in 5 years. In fact, here's what you should know, Eddie. Even if I gave the community ground of Buxton $1, I would have given the community ground of Buxton more than the APNU AFC did in 5 years.
But that's the thing. That's the thing. Like I said, these guys were looking where they can enrich themselves, how they can get kickbacks, and that is all they were involved in. And for the last 5 years, the 5 years they were in office, and the last 9 months, added to that, all they were involved in is their lies and misinformation campaign. That brings me to, I just wanted to show you how much lying and being disingenuous is in their DNAs. That we have this article circulating, and I probably, with Harman. Harman is claiming that the budget for his leader of the opposition office has been reduced. But guess what Harman was asking for? Harman was asking for $8 million for cleaning services, right? These guys got accustomed. We know the $1.6 billion Durban Park that they built. We know the $12.5 million that they were paying for a bottom house in Charlestown to store, I think, a couple boxes of condoms. That was the only thing that was found in there. And Harmon wanted $10 million for his staff. So he still thinks he has access to the state purse, so he pays himself and his gang the fat cat salaries, and that they splurge and they party. It might be interesting to find out how much he wanted in the budget for the leader of the opposition office for meals and refreshments, because they are known for having lavish parties and they sit down together and they eat and marry themselves. Absolutely, absolutely, they care nothing about the people. Harman is not arguing. Harman is not arguing and complaining that the youngsters are not getting footballs, Charles, or they're not their grounds are not being prepared for them to play, or that the poor families are not getting jobs, or you should put more money into this thing, because there is nothing to complain with regards to what the government is doing. The government has been on the ball, ensuring benefits are brought to people. So Harman, instead of arguing maybe for more for the people, he's arguing for more for himself. But the speaker exposed him, exposed Harman to the liar he is, to say that he is getting more than the previous leader of the opposition office was getting. He is getting more, and he's doing less, because all Harman does is complain all the time, cry like a baby all the time, all over the place, complains about everything, and offer no solution. Absolutely nothing he's doing for the people. Even to the 217,000 people who voted APNU, he's not doing anything for them. He's writing letter all over the place. Suddenly, Harman learns to write. So he's writing everybody, and he's doing absolutely nothing for the people. This guy, and what is sad, I'll bring you in here, Suzanne, but what is sad is that a lot of people thought the few young persons who they put in the National Assembly on their side would have made a difference. Would have made a difference. But they're worse. They're worse. The Shara Duncans and the Christopher Jones and the others. They're worse. We saw what the Seer did the other day. Absolutely shameless.
Well, you know, Eddie, the fish rots from the head. And so we had a president in former President Granger, um, who set the precedent. And while he is going to bed at 8 o'clock at night, our president only last week was addressing the nation at 8 o'clock at night. So instead of President Ali being in his bed, he was addressing the nation, talking about the importance of vaccination and us celebrating a milestone of
He was an hour
vaccinating over
late and he was at after
150.
9 o'clock.
So, so
He was after 9 o'clock. He was an hour late.
yeah,
Later he would
it
have
was
been
after
sleep.
9, something like that, yes. And that is testimony. That is a demonstration that our government is working day and night, Sunday to Sunday. And people can see it in our actions. They don't have to come here and listen to Rodrigues or Ramson or anybody talk. They can judge us by our actions. You asked earlier about the ministers that were there before. You had a culmination of so many things that went wrong. You first of all, you had people who were not qualified to be in office. You had people who were lazy. You had people who had the lack of will to do anything. You have a party who did not deliver on their 100-day plan, much more their 5-year plan, their manifesto. They drafted that document and callously disregarded it and everything that they said to the people of this country that they would do. So if you have a party that comes into office and then cannot even fulfill their first 100-day plan, how can you trust them to complete their term in office? They clearly had no political will. They have no integrity. And that is why they did not keep the promises that they made to the people of this country. And that is why now they are back in opposition and they will stay there permanently. So that is it. That is on the ministers. Now we spoke too about government having a collective effort. Look what is happening with the rollout of this scholarship program. You have all of the cabinet pitching in on this effort. There is no competition here. What we have here is a competent president leading a competent and motivated cabinet that is made up of young people. You have a lot of women there. You have people of all ethnicity, and we are working on behalf of government. We are living and demonstrating this oneness that our president talks about a lot. We are demonstrating it. We're all working towards one goal. We want a better Guyana. And all of cabinet is working, whether housing is going out there on behalf of education, or Minister Ramson is going out there and helping another ministry, ministers going out together in a collaborative effort, because we understand it is one government, it is one effort, and our manifesto commitments we take seriously. I saw a few days ago, Minister Manikchan put up all of the commitments we made under education, and she ticked off those that were accomplished already. And I'm talking about 75%. When I went through it, the commitments we made in education, 75% have already been accomplished. And then that made me go and look back at the commitments we made in housing and in water. And when I looked at the commitments we made in housing, we already achieved in our first year all of our commitments. Of course, our distribution of house lots is 10,000 annually, and we said that in our manifesto, and we are well on our way to achieving that. But all of the other things, the reversal of VAT on building materials, removing VAT from electricity and water, and so many other things, we have already achieved more than half of our entire manifesto. So that alone is a demonstration through action that our government has integrity, that when we went to the people of this country and we said, vote for us, and these are the things that we are going to do, and these are the promises that we're going to deliver on, we took that seriously. And Charles can attest to this. In cabinet, the president holds us accountable, and we report every week on the progress that is being made in each ministry. We update the entire cabinet, and we give a report, a status report on everything that is happening in our ministries, so that all of the ministers have an understanding of where we're going as a government. We're not pulling and tugging in different directions. We're working towards one goal, and that is ensuring that we deliver goods and services to the people of our country, and that the development and the transformation that is coming to our country that we talk about, we are ensuring that we prepare our people to receive those benefits. And that is what we're doing through the scholarship program. This scholarship program is more than just handing out scholarships. It is so much bigger than that. It is about empowering people. It is about enriching them. It is about equipping our people to be able to fill the gaps in our economy, to be able to answer the call, to be able to fill the needs of the oil and gas sector, or whichever sector opportunities will become available. We as a government, it is our responsibility to ensure that our human resource. We talk a lot about natural resource, but our greatest resource is our human resource. And so we have to, as a government, take care of our people, invest in our people, in their welfare, improving their quality of life, improving their standard of living, ensuring that they have their basic needs are satisfied. The need to deliver affordable housing, water, to be able to have access to recreational facilities, to ensuring that they have a reliable and quality healthcare system, and that they have quality delivery of education, and that no matter which part of the country you live, that you have equal access to education. And that's what we're doing with this scholarship program, is ensuring that we raise the standard of our people. We talk a lot about foreign investors, and there is a lot of fear mongering. If you listen to various news outlets, fear mongering that, oh, the foreigners are coming in and they're going to take our jobs and they're going to take our land and the Guyanese will be left behind. Well, here you have a government that is ensuring that we invest in our people, that we're making sure that, as Charles said, that we give them their house lots so that they can have the security of knowing that they own their own homes, that the roof over their head is theirs, that is something that they can pass on to their children, something that they can leave as an inheritance. That security alone, it also increases your family wealth, makes you more responsible, knowing that you have to build your own home and protect it. And all of these benefits that government is bringing to the people, and is what the people are entitled to, and it is us keeping our word to them. We are ensuring that we protect their well-being, and that we improve the quality of life for our people, and that we equip them with knowledge, and that we keep them healthy as well during this pandemic. We've spared no expense as a government in terms of making vaccines available. Other countries in the world are grappling with whether they have enough vaccines for their people. We in Guyana don't have that worry. Our people are fortunate enough to have a government that has made the vaccines available. And yet we have to convince people to take the vaccine, because you have irresponsible leaders who benefited from scholarships but are not encouraging people to go out there and obtain a scholarship free from the government. You have leaders out there who have taken the vaccine. They were first in line to take the vaccine, but are not encouraging people to go out there and get vaccinated. These are leaders who do not care about the people and who will put political points in front of the well-being of the people. And that is assessment that people have to make for themselves, and judge your leaders and judge your politicians based on their action. All of the APNU base, their supporters, know that their leaders took that vaccine. They know that. And yet, there's whisper campaigns and so on going on in Linden. And you know the challenge that we've had in getting the people of Linden vaccinated. But just like the scholarship program and our vaccination program, we're ensuring that we roll it out in a way where, whether you live on the coastland or whether you live in the hinterland, that you have equal access to all of government's resources and all of the goods and services being delivered by government. And Eddie,
You made a point
I
about
forgot to mention one more thing. You
go
mentioned
ahead, go ahead.
Harmon's budget. And Harmon, again, you know, they tell lies that are so easily debunked. It makes you wonder. He spoke about his budget being slashed. Well, that is false, because he asked for an increase, and because he didn't get an increase, he regards that as it being slashed, which is totally disingenuous. And I remember very pointedly the other day when the First Lady's office got a slight increase. I think it was barely $5 million increase in her budget. Our First Lady, who is doing meaningful work, who is transforming lives with a very, very small budget and having to go out there and raise funds on her own. She got a small increase in her budget, and she's making such a great impact and difference in our country. And Harmon wants $8 million for janitorial services, and because he didn't get it, he's crying like a baby. But it is time for Harmon to grow up. And if he does not want to acknowledge our president, and he does not want to acknowledge the cabinet, he will be crying for the next 5 years. And therefore, he will be an ineffective opposition leader. And the people of their supporters and those members of parliament who sit on the opposition side will be there for a very, very long time.
Sometimes I go, it pains me to refer to people like Harmon and the others as leaders, because I don't think they really understand the meaning of that term leader. I think they're in charge of organizations. He is in charge of everybody in the opposition, maybe, in Parliament, but Harman has not displayed a single quality of a leader. A leader will not protect himself and allow his people to be exposed. A criminal will do that. A criminal will protect himself and put people in harm's way. Not a leader. A leader will not misinform. A leader will not fight for his own benefits while ignoring the people whom would have supported him. So Harman is absolutely no leader. Harman is on a hustle to see if he can get some more money to the leader of the opposition office. And I don't know how he get things done, and he gets some money, get a kickback from it. That's all Harman does. Harman is a full-time hustler. He's doing opposition leader job part-time,
If
and
Harmon
he's
is on a
doing
sinking
his
ship, he's the
hustle.
first man
It's
that
a
will jump.
full-time business. He's already jumping, as far as I'm concerned. He cares nothing about them. And this man has absolutely no credibility. Absolutely no credibility. And before I bring you in, Charles, I wanted to. This is extremely funny. It's sad, but it's funny. Harman is complaining about a company developing a shore base in the West Bank. The company removed some mangroves. The company is putting a revetment, a sheet pile revetment to ensure that homes and so on are protected. And Harman is complaining about giving away lands and all sorts of things. This is the same man. This is the same gentleman who gave 90 acres of waterfront lands to a company in which his body is a director. You know the Great Wall Inc., Serato Phillips. When Harman, as Director General of the Ministry Presidency then, was sharing out the Atlantic Ocean and so on. And the guy come now to tell us about a man investing to create jobs. And he's not investing recklessly. He's ensuring that he's putting systems in place to ensure people are protected, to protect his property that he's setting up, the shore base, and to protect the people around. Harman is the man who was sharing out 20.70 acres of Schoonard foreshore, 20 acres of Good Fortune foreshore, 50.8 acres of Best foreshore. And the man now coming to tell us about a man developing a small plot of land, about he's so concerned about mangroves. That is the kind of scampish things, the kind of scamp people like Harman and the others are. They think they can continue to mislead the people of this country. But Guyanese are smart people. Guyanese know Harman is on a hustle. I bet you my bottom dollar, if something was in this development for Harman, you would have never heard about this. If he had the opportunity to get a kickback, you would have never heard about this. But this is the kind of people you're dealing with. Charles, I'll give you a chance here.
Yeah, so I saw him out on the speedboat trying to bring some attention to this issue, and I loved seeing him out on that speedboat because when he was in government, he was on a yacht alone. He was on a yacht in Miami, Florida, alone. Now he's in opposition. All of a sudden, he's on a speedboat in the Demerara River with a couple of his uh, rejects as MPs, people who are left behind, they don't know any better, so they follow in the worst quote unquote leader. So I was so happy to see him in that speedboat. And that was where he will forever be. No more yachts. I'm very happy to see that. That's the first thing. The second is in relation to in relation to Harman himself. I don't really want to waste my time talking about an irrelevant man like Joseph Harman. There's a old saying in Guyana, God don't like ugly. And it's been not only has he been a failure in government, he has been a failure in opposition. And I don't want to waste my time speaking about failures, other than we should never return to failures. In relation to the issue of the development that's happening on the West Bank. I was, first of all, initially when the story was brought out and they didn't have all of the information, it was concerning. And then when we got to the bottom of it and we saw the elaborate developmental plan, which was then reported publicly by Bishop Wanedja, it is very important that people understand that the foreshore of the country is going to develop rapidly, and that especially along the banks of the rivers, and it's very important that it does develop. That's one. Two, when we speak about the development of banks of rivers and the removal of mangroves, just let's look at in Guyana alone. I'll take you to some international examples, but let's look at Guyana alone, because I did see a comment from Stabroek News, their page 1 comment today, and I was a little bit disappointed when I saw it, because Stabroek News obviously is they're far more aware about what's happening in the world and how development happens and the differences in developmental stages for countries, and how it happens for developed countries. So let's look on the east bank of the river. At the John Finans Wharf, is there mangroves there? At the Munish Wharf, is there mangroves there? At the place where we buy fish, at the wharf there, is there any mangroves there? Is that an environmental crime, the absence of the mangroves there? Is it that the absence of the mangroves at those locations causes some detrimental flooding? No. What's there is a far superior and far more expensive and elaborate means of protection that is important to balance for our developmental trajectory and outcomes. When you're going into oil and gas development, as Guyana is about to, the banks now are very critical for the movement of goods and services, especially for merchant goods, but also oil and gas goods and services. A lot of the activity, especially that is where the projects are offshore. In order for you to be able to capture more business activity and economic activity in the country, which is where people can get an opportunity to work and have businesses and make investments, and for foreign companies to come in for investments as well, they need to be able to offer the wharf services and the wharf space. Look at what happened by Gafours as another example. When that was where Gafours had used to bring in all of their hardware material and their building material, construction material, etc. That entire space now has been taken over for oil and gas. There's no mangroves there. So, and I'm just using that as a local example. Let's use international examples, because I know that there are many people that are watching around the world. I can take you to go on the Bay of Toronto, or go on the River Thames in London, or go on, how about in Venice as an example. There are even no streets in Venice. There's no mangroves there. It's canals. Look at Amsterdam as another example. Elaborate networks that are of the shore that is protected by the investment. A lot of the times the protection is needed that comes from mangroves when you don't have the money to spend on building wharves and seawalls, etc. But if we are balancing our economic activity and the means for us to be able to create wealth in our country and business opportunities and jobs in our country, especially coming from the new sector of the emerging oil and gas sector, it has to come from the development that happens on our banks and on the shores. That's what this business, this company is doing. So while I don't want to pay attention too much to what Harmon is saying, because there is nothing that Harman can say, or anyone coming out of the APN UAFC that has any kind of credibility or logic or a basis of intellect that would make me want to be able to pay attention to them. But in relation to any of the other commentators or the media houses who want to bring attention to the issue, it's very important that people understand that we have to be able to balance the demands that are coming from the business opportunities in order for us to rapidly transform the country. What I want to emphasize, Eddie, especially to the people who are looking at our show, is that the country is going to transform, and the country is going to transform right before our very eyes. And we have to, as a government, we have to determine how is it that we can capture more of the economic and business opportunities to transform the country in the most rapid way, so that that translates into direct impacts on people's lives, improving their opportunity to earn an income and to take those incomes up to a very high level where they can become more prosperous for themselves and for their families, for them to be able to create more business investments for themselves, and also to be able to see where there's more business opportunities, create partnerships with foreign companies as well, so that you can have the movement of capital and the transfer of the technology and the development of skills. All of those things are critical elements to how we develop as a country and how rapidly we develop. The means to be able to have that conduit, effectively a conduit of that transfer of skills and capital and technology, a lot of that has to do with trade and trading ports, like airports and wharves and deep water harbors. Those are the means, and big road networks between countries. Those are the means by which we would see our country transform. It's very important when this is coming on one of the points that Suzanne had raised us a few minutes ago about skills and education. The most important muscle that and tool that we have as a people, not only as Guyanese people, but as human beings, as a species, has always been our brain, has always been our brain. And what we put into our brain determines our individual outcomes and our collective outcomes. Now, a lot of what we do is based on education, but a lot of what we do is also based on trade. And that's why it is critical at this stage for us to be able to leverage the opportunity that we have coming from the new and emerging sectors and sectors, so that we stimulate the trade and aggressively capture a share of the business opportunities for the people of the country.
Thanks very much, Charles. Susan, I'll give you a chance to wrap things up. We have just about 3 minutes or so to go, so I'm going to give you a chance to close things off.
Sure, sure. Eddie, Harman is a joke, and he is completely incompetent. He is the blind leading the blind. And anybody who listens to Harman or the APNU coalition is their only source of information, that is a recipe for disaster. That's a sad situation. But concerning this mangrove issue, Eddie, for the benefit of those who are listening tonight, as our economy transforms and we move from a more traditional economy, investing in our traditional industries such as agriculture, mining, forestry, etc., and we transform into a more sophisticated economy, into an oil and gas economy, there are going to be some very tough decisions that we're going to have to make as a government. When we chose to reopen school during the pandemic, that was a tough decision, Eddie. It wasn't easy to make because we had to balance the interests of keeping our people safe and making sure our children are not left behind. So this is a balance that we have to strike. If we want to take Guyana into the new and emerging sectors, and we want Guyana to become another Dubai or a Singapore, there's going to be tough decisions that we're going to have to make. But what we have to do as a government is to ensure that we balance our resources and we balance the interests. We have to protect our environment, but we have to ensure that we can get cheaper electricity for our people. We want to bring in the gas pipeline. There may be some destruction in that, but we have to balance, we have to do that, we have to conduct an analysis to understand what are the benefits that will come from that. And once we've assessed the greater benefit to the people of our country, then we're going to have to make those decisions. If you look at the mangrove situation in isolation, you will think that it's a disaster. It's an environmental disaster. But you have to put it into context. What are we replacing that with? This is a 100% locally owned company that will be occupying that space, that will have responsibilities for ensuring the protection of our sea defense, that they have enough sea defense there. This is going to be somebody who is going to create hundreds of jobs and spin off from this investment. If we don't create more shore bases here in Guyana, the investors are going to look elsewhere. They're going to create those shore bases in the nearest location, Trinidad. And then all of the work will go to the Trinidadian people. And once again, Guyanese will lose out. So we have to do a balancing act. There are going to be some uncomfortable decisions that we're going to have to make as a government. But I want to assure our citizens that whatever decisions we make will be carefully considered, and we will balance the benefit with the sacrifices that we have to make. And I can guarantee everyone that we have access to the information, and we carefully consider and deliberate on these issues before a decision is made. And I can guarantee everyone that responsible decisions will be made in the interests of the environment and in the interests of our people, so that Guyana can get to that place where we are a fully developed country that will be the envy of the world. And the most important thing for us as a government is empowering and enriching the lives of our people, and that our people are not left behind as Guyana transforms. While we transform the landscape, we have to transform lives as well.
Thank you very much, Susan. And of course, this is where we're going to wrap things up. But I just want to close quickly by encouraging the citizens to capitalize on the opportunities of the vaccines that are available. I keep saying this program after program. When you look at the statistics, you haven't seen a single case, or there hasn't been a single occasion where it was proven scientifically or otherwise that a single person died as a result of taking the vaccine. When you look at the numbers globally and even locally, you're seeing millions of people or hundreds of millions of people infected and millions of people dying. And locally, you're seeing hundreds of people dying. Not a single case of a person getting sick or dying as a result of the vaccine. So your safer bet is to take the vaccine. We've said it repeatedly that the vaccines will not prevent you from contracting the COVID-19. What will prevent you? The vaccine will prevent you from being hospitalized and ending up dead. What you need to do is to take the vaccine and continue to take the necessary precautions. It is free. Many countries, like you said, Susan, are struggling to get access to the vaccine. The government of Guyana is ensure that it purchases vaccines in many instances to ensure that people have access to the vaccine. So I want to
People
encourage
need
the
to be
citizens.
afraid of the virus and not afraid of the vaccine. That is the real fear. The fear has to be of the virus and not of the vaccine. And we have to be a part of the solution and not part of the problem. And the only way
Exactly.
we'll be able to
So that is,
achieve herd immunity is to vaccinate 80% of our people for us to
stop
go back
listening
to
to
any
her. And then,
semblance of
yeah,
normalcy.
exactly. Because at the end of the day, as a result of this virus, people are suffering. And if we can find a way to bring the numbers down, you can find a way to continue to protect yourself, whether by the vaccine, social distancing, wearing your mask, stop being irresponsible generally, then our country can return to some level of normalcy. The president himself says he's committed, his government is committed to ensuring that the economy and our country return to some level of normalcy at the soonest possible time. However, we all have a responsibility to take the vaccine to protect ourselves, protect our families, and also to do the responsible thing. Anything you want to say in closing quickly, Charles?
No, I'm very happy that we're getting a chance to speak to people, and we know that it's a tough time. We know that COVID has been tough for everyone, and that it's been tough for the world. So the government is doing the best that it could do in the circumstances too. We know that you're doing the best in the circumstances as well. And we're going to try to continue to give you the help that you need and the support that you need. It's also important that you continue to pay attention to what the government is saying. And it's very important that you understand now where you're going to get the leadership from. Leadership at this point is very, very important. It's either you get the leadership from the opposition or you get the leadership from the government. I think what has been proven over time is that the one group of people that you can't trust is the APNU AFC. And if it's the one group of people that you can trust is the People's Progressive Party. And now that we're in government and that we're showing that it hasn't been last 5 years, and especially the lead up into the election when we crafted our manifesto, it hasn't been a gaffe. It's been a very deliberate effort of crafting programs and projects that are based on what we've heard from everyone on the major issues of the country, crafting that program and then catering for it in our budget. And now you're seeing that you're the leaders of your country working in a very aggressive and determined way, hand in hand with people and listening and hearing constantly all the time. And there isn't a weekend that goes by where you don't see ministers working on Saturday and Sunday, and it's every weekend. It's almost you're going to get to the point where you're seeing too much of us now that um, there's so much work to be done. But we also know that you need a lot of help. We know that the country has really suffered over the last 5 years. We know that we know that the country is about to transform too, and we also need to give the country, especially people, the direction that it needs to see how we can capitalize on the opportunities. We are going to become a prosperous country. We are going to transform. Our country will transform before our very eyes. I can guarantee you that. It's how fast we get there is very important, and it's very important that we pull in the same direction. And that once the election is over, once the event of the election is over, which is to determine who is your government, that we put the politics aside and we all pull in the same direction and follow the leadership of your government so that we can transform the country and implement the programs that will change everyone's lives and make everyone more prosperous.
Thank you very much, Charles Ramson Jr., Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, and of course, Susan Rodrigues, Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water. And to our viewers, we want to thank you very much for being part of this program. We're going to be back with you tomorrow evening. Michael Gordon will be taking you through that program. Until then, and I'll be back with you, of course, on Thursday. Until then, we want to say thanks for watching and have a good rest of the evening. Susan, Charles, it was a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of the evening.